When you're match fishing, you can't afford to make mistakes. Using the right piece of kit in the right way at the right time is the key to success. Now, joining me in this film are two of the country's top match anglers, and we're going to be looking at how to get the best out of your equipment and, more to the point, how to win matches. My role within the team is to assist in the design and development process. Now, I'm a diver, and being a diver, it gives me the opportunity to go underwater and see these products in the real world, where they're actually being used to catch fish rather than just on the bench. The feedback I give ensures that the design process is complete, and it also means that you know that the products are doing exactly what they should do on the tin, not what people think they should do. We're out at linear fisheries, nice clear water where I can get down below the surface and have a look and see exactly what these products do. And then a little bit later on, we're going to put the boys on the bank where they've got to show that they can catch fish with them. All Matrix products are put through their paces by top flight match anglers, and they don't fly much higher than this man, Thompson.
What I'm going to show you now is the Matrix Evolution flatbed method feeders. There's two types. This one, which is a clear flatbed with no ribs, no hoops. We use this in shallower water on short distance casting, up to 1 metre deep. The reason it has no ribs is because it doesn't need to cast so far, the fish can then get in and attack that bait, get right into where the hook bait is. The other one has ribs, little hoops either side of the feeder. Reason for that is because it gives more clearance for the hook and the hook bait to travel through without snagging on the hoops. Like some method feeders have, you don't want your hook length or anything to snag up. You want the fish to be able to cleanly get at that hook and that hook bait. These are the medium size. They come in two sizes, medium and large, and anything up from 15 to 80 grams. And depending on the distance that you'd want to throw, you just choose 15, 30, 45 gram, and then obviously use the rod to suit. I'll show you now quickly how we put these feeders and this system all together onto the line. Normal inline feeders are permanently attached to the line, but the Evolution system allows you to change whenever you want to, be it for a bigger feeder, a smaller feeder, or a different type. And the key is a hole and a groove at the back of the feeder. That allows all the magic to happen, and it works simply like this. You take your hook and you pass it through the back of the feeder. Once that's through, you just pull it through, like so. Then comes through your hook length feeder bead. You turn it over, and there you pass through the groove in the back of the feeder the main line. This line is 8 pound submerged mono, perfect feeder mono. On top of that, we have a tail rubber, which that is what locks this feeder into place. That feeder is now connected, and I always use just a little rubber bead because I like to keep that feeder just locked in for the initial bite. That rubber will clear. When you hook a fish, it will blow up the line, and the feeder, nice and safe, it will be allowed to travel. It's a nice, easy, simple system, and it's quite simple in reverse. If I wanted to change that for a different type of feeder, like I say, or a larger feeder, or even smaller, just reverse the process. Tail rubber off, line out the groove, feeder bead through. We're careful bringing the hook through because you don't want to dull the point. Seconds. I'll quickly show you now how we load these feeders up. We use them in conjunction with a squeeze and feed method mould, and my first choice is going to be ground bait. It really is just a simple process. You just get the mould. What I like to do first is just put a little ground bait in, and then I like to make just a little indentation to take the bait. So I then got nice Ivy's boiler there, so just put in that little indentation. I then add more ground bait, fill it right up. That's a good thing about these feeders, they'll take a lot of bait. So if you want to create a nice big area for fish to target, there's a big area of bait there concentrated down. They're a deep method feeder. You could hold them back if you wanted, but I prefer to put lots and lots of bait on. I then just keep the line in the centre of the feeder, like so, bring it over, close it down, and then press. Good firm press. And it's simply like it says, just turn it over, squeeze, and you get a perfect method. That bait is right in the centre of that now, and it's aerodynamically perfect for casting. So I want that feeder to hit the bottom and break down where it's on the bottom. I don't want bait to be breaking up everywhere. So now let's chuck this baby in and see what's happening under the water.
The first thing that you can see is that the hoops on the feeder have done their job perfectly and the rig has landed intact on the bottom. The ground bait is starting to break down slowly, a little bit like a lava flow. After a couple of minutes in the water, the boilie hook bait starts to appear, and this was placed towards the bottom of the mould so it sits at the top of the pile. With fish pecking at the bait, it would break down faster, but this gives you a great insight into what's happening and how quickly. One of the major things that we saw was how the retrieve affected the spread of bait along the bottom. You can see here that when the feeder is retrieved, the bait comes off in a big cloud and spreads around the peg. When the cloud is settled, this is what's left, a light dusting of ground bait, so the next time you cast in, the main area of feed will be your method and hook bait.
Right, we've just seen what's happened with ground bait on the method. Now we're going to load it with some pellets. Just same process again, just repeat it as we did before. A few pellets into the mould, little indentation, boil into the middle, load it again. And these feeders, because of the hoops on the side, and they do take pellets extremely well, same as ground bait, they load up ever so well. Once again, good firm press, once again squeeze, loaded. Now let's chuck this baby in.
Pellets break down a lot quicker than ground bait because of the air trap between them, so bear that in mind with the firmness of squeeze you apply. The small hoops on the Evolution feeder hold the pellets in place perfectly, and they come off when needed, not before. Having seen the retrieve of the ground bait, I suggested to twitch the feeder before retrieval this time, and it had the desired effect of keeping the pellet tight rather than spreading them around the peg. With bigger hoops on the feeder, the spread of bait would have been significantly wider, therefore spreading your feeding fish around the peg more and slowing your bite rate down.
A little earlier we saw the flatbed feeder with no hoops at all on it. We're now going to load this one up and see how that behaves out underwater.
Even though there are no hoops on the flatbed Evolution feeder, the design of the lip means that the ground bait stays on and makes it to the bottom of the lake perfectly. It breaks down in the same way as the hooped feeder, with the feed bait falling off slowly and eventually revealing the hook bait, a perfect pile of feed. Generally, a firmer squeeze is required to compact the bait, and this means you get a very tight baited patch with no spillage. When retrieving, and this happens with all feeders, there's a puff of cloud as the ground bait lifts off the feeder. With a hooped feeder, it spreads to a wider, light dusting. With no hoops on, this is what you get, a much more concentrated carpet.
Now the Matrix Evolution feeder range is called Evolution for a reason, and it's so versatile. One rod is needed to fish so many methods, all thanks to that groove and the little hole at the back of the feeder that allows you just to remove that feeder at any time, change your tactic, change to a heavier feeder. And the tactic part of it is something that I really like about the system. The fact that I can switch over to these, and it could either be a lead clip or the pellet feeder. A pellet feeder works similar to a method feeder, except that it doesn't allow for the fish to come in and attack from a ball that's breaking down from all sides. What happens is, once it's loaded up, your little hook bait's inside that feeder, and then once it's loaded, all the bait will just push out in one parcel and deposit your hook bait in a little pile, so the fish can then intercept it there, unlike a method feeder where it's breaking down all sides and forming a little melting process as such, where the bait is left sat. So say I wanted to change tactic and I wanted to put either the lead clip or this pellet feeder on the line, and it's so simple. I'll just take the larger one. So I got back to my rig, slide my little bead out the way, tail rubber out the way, just pull the line out of the groove. As you can see, it's all come out in one hit, straight out the back of the feeder. So simple. And we just repeat the process again. We take the hook, we pass it through, grab the hook, let the feeder bead follow through as well, straight through. The line is into the groove, like so. Tail rubber down. That feeder is on the line in a matter of seconds. Now, if I was fishing any other sort of inline pellet feeder or method feeder, I'll be off my box, I'd have a separate rod set up, and I ain't got to keep casting now. Everything's going down the same hole, so that change of tactic. Normally I'll be ranging and thinking, oh, I've got another rod, am I hitting the same mark? Now I'm in exactly the same place with a different tactic that can potentially catch me more fish. Today I'm using a 10-foot carp master, mainly because I'll just be fishing of a distance of 45 to 50 metres, line rated from 3 to 8 pounds, lovely soft progressive action where it has plenty of power through the low spigot joint in the butt. With it being 10 foot, it allows me to just, when I'm playing fish, those fish just pop up in a much closer netting range. The reel I'm using is a 4000 size reflex reel. 4000 size mainly because the bigger face on the front of the reel allows for more accuracy and the line flows better as it comes through the eyes of the rod. So that is the perfect combination. These rods start at 8 foot and go right the way through to a 13 foot. Basically you would just match to the rod to the distance or the weight of feeder that you're like wishing to fish with. So this is the Matrix Evolution pellet feeder. It's a feeder that I use in lots of situations, open water fishing, and when I'm fishing towards islands. It's normally islands that I lend and my enthusiasm tend to use this feeder. That's when I tend to use it, when I'm fishing towards a feature. Basically because it gives you such a more condensed and concentrated, tighter area of bait. You know, because of the way it's loaded, it's unlike a method feeder, where a method feeder would melt on all sides and all the ground bait would break down or pellets would break down. This is more concentrated because it's shielded for 3/4 of it, and the way it's loaded, the bait's pushed in, your hook bait's pushed in, it's covered over, and then 3 little holes at the back of the feeder, they allow water just to gush through, and it just pushes the pellets and the hook bait out in one little tight parcel at the front of the feeder, which lets fish just to come in and attack a little concentrated area. I find that perfect for when I'm fishing islands or a feature, but they work equally as well in open water. Quite a simple process. First of all, I just drop the feeder into the pellets and it's just scoop. Just start pressing the pellets into the back of the feeder, and then I just pick like this Ivy's boil up and just push that in, and then I just keep packing it tight like so. As you can see, it's a tight parcel of bait that will go in, hit the bottom, burst out and leave you a nice little tight target area.
Les is absolutely right in his comments, and the feeder is sat perfectly on the bottom. The bait is tight and there's no spread, no loss, and all the feed is concentrated into one tight area. As the water flushes through the carefully designed holes, the pellets slowly work their way out, giving a tight and most attractive spot for the fish to hone into. The retrieve is very different from the method feeder, as the bait is deposited in a small pile rather than spread out. No twitch is required. Well, there we go. That's a quick look at some of the products and how they perform underwater. The big question we want to see now is, how do they perform in an angling situation? Well, we're down here at Larford Lakes. We're going on that one, which is the special pool. And first up, it's product design guru Ricky Teale. There's not many people in the business that know as much about designing products as this man. He's been there, done that, and actually invented the t-shirt. A regular in the match scene, he's either out on the bank catching fish or in the design studios perfecting products to help you catch fish.
This is a basic plastic open end feeder. As you can see, it's attached via the link swivel that's on the rig, so anytime during when you're fishing you can take it off, you can put a bigger one on, a smaller one on, you can put a cage on. It's very easy. The lead is quite wide, but not too wide across the length of it, so that when it hits the bottom, you know it's there, sat upright, perfect. It's riveted in 4 places, and also I've seen a lot of different things and a lot of different people doing different booms off feeders and stuff like that. The best and most effective for me is the simplest, and this is the simplest. It's just a dead straightforward swivel moulded into a stiff plastic link. It helps just keep your line away from the feeder, and it helps in retrieving a little bit when you're winding back. It just makes the feeder sit perfectly when you're winding back. Choose a size. The great for fishing where it's slightly deeper, and if you don't want many particles in your peg when you cast in, you know, bits of ground bait coming off, and you want to try and get your bait to the bottom, these are the best ones for it.
The first thing you'll notice is how well they blend in. The colour is perfect, and just look at the way the bait flows out of each side. When it's retrieved, it leaves a small trail along the bottom, keeping the fish concentrated in one area. The pressure of the squeeze when you fill the feeder is the key to success here. Too loose and it comes out on the cast, too tight and it doesn't come out at all. Let's have a look at a bait that's been squeezed too tight in the feeder. It takes much longer to come out, and when retrieved is actually dragged away when the feeder is reeled in, therefore spreading the bait round the peg rather than concentrating it in the area you want it.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to fill up an open end feeder, but this doesn't go for an open end feeder, it can go for a cage feeder as well. Before I show you that, what you must do, put your hook bait on. And I just usually keep it in my hand like that and fill up the feeder with my other hand. Now the great thing about feeder fishing is it's all self-regulating. So you can see here I've got a small amount of ground bait in a bowl next to me with other ground bait behind me, and you don't want to put too much in this bowl or have it too full of ground bait. You have your other baits here, and just take a pinch every time you want to fill your feeder up. Whatever bait it might be it maggots, worms, casters, sweet corn, a few pellets, put a few in your bowl like that, and make sure they try and get in the middle of your feeder. Fill it up from both sides. Make sure you don't squeeze it too tight. You can see there now you've got your feeder full up with a few bits of worms, casters and everything like that in the middle, ready to cast in. Dead simple, dead easy. But put your hook bait on first. So you've got hook bait here, fill it up, and now ready to cast in. Make sure you hit the clip and your mark on the far side. You can vary the amount of squeezing you do dependent on how far you want the bait or how long you want it to break down. Bite there straight away. It's only a small fish. You can see, dead simple, dead easy to use. The fishing's gone a bit funny, a bit different. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to put a cage feeder on, roughly about the same size. With a cage feeder, it releases the bait a lot quicker, and more particles come out as it drops through the water. So you've got a column of bait going through the water with most of it still intact in the feeder at bottom. So it draws fish from different levels into your peg, and sometimes, especially with bream fishing, they'll follow this column of food down to the bottom and hopefully find your hook bait. It's done exactly the same way, easy to use, dead simple. Loading it up is exactly the same as we've done before. Put a pinch of bait in, a pinch of bait in, a pinch of bait in. With this, it's just a change of presentation on the day. Again, you can see, fill it up the same, but you can also see now that you've got far more of the bait exposed outside the feeder. So on impact to the water, some of that will come off and form, like I say, a column in the water to bring fish down to the bottom.
And here it is on the bottom, still full, with the water swelling into the bait from all sides, causing it to expand and release a bit quicker than the open-ended feeder. Ricky is bang right with the comment about the particles falling through the water column, and here we can see the effect they have, pulling fish right down onto the feed. After a minute or so in the water, the cage is emptying, so let's see what happens after the retrieve. With the cloud now settled, we can see where the feed has been, and as soon as it lifted off the bottom, it discharged its contents into a nice tight pile rather than spreading them round a peg.
Let's just cast it in and see what happens. Just by, changing the presentation a little bit, a few more particles drifting around, just draws a few fish into your peg. There we go, a skimmer caught on a cage feeder. Sometimes you have to chuck in excess of 70, 80 metres. What you need for doing that, you need something like this, which is a horizon feeder. A lot of them, when you're chucking that amount of distance and you're using that amount of power, they sort of move in the air, they wobble in the air, and it cuts down the distance. With this, it goes like that. The bait follows the weight. To go with the horizon feeder, I've got a horizon rod and a horizon reel. You need big guides on your rod, a powerful rod to cast, 80, 100 gram, 120 gram feeders. You need proper gear to do it. Filling up the feeders is simple again. You do exactly the same thing. All your bait is exposed, so it works exactly the same way as the normal cage feeder. You'll see that this feeder actually just sits up in the water, it just sits up a little bit like that. So all the bait is exposed. Pick your spot on the far bank like you normally do. Again, make sure you hit the clip, bring it down, make sure all your lines sunk, fish there straight away. Great day's fishing here today, fishing with 3 different sorts of feeders: cage feeders, plastic open end feeders and horizon feeders. If you keep it simple and do the right things, you too can catch loads of fish.
So we've moved away from the gravel pit for a little change of scenery. We've moved to cobhouse fisheries in Worcestershire, but also we've had a change of season. Last time it was mid-autumn, we're now in mid-winter. But method feeder fishing can still be devastating at this time of year. So we're going to take everything we learned from the underwater footage and put it into practice right here at this venue. We're using exactly the same setup as that we were using at the gravel pit because we want continuation. 10-foot Carpmaster rod, 4000 size Ultron reel, 6 pound main line, and the evolution systems on there with the Teale rubber and the rubber bead with a method feeder on the line, just which will allow me to switch if I feel like it at any point during the session. I've already cast in. We've got about 8 foot of water here and I'm already getting indications already, so there's fish already active and moving towards that ball. I'm using a 30 gram method feeder. This particular method feeder I use with a mould. This is a squeeze and feed mould, and moulds have been a real game changer when it comes to method feeder fishing. They give a perfect uniform shape every time and the same amount of bait every time as well. And that's the key thing that we're going to talk about next, something I call the squeeze. When you're loading the feeder, the squeeze is the most important thing because that allows the breakdown time when that feeder is actually in the water. So let's demonstrate how we fill the mould and the squeeze. Just simply, just a few pellets in first, lower the bait in, fill the mould up to the top, over we go with the feeder, and it's just a firm press. And what we learnt from the underwater footage is that a firm one just in the mould will get you 4, maybe 5 minutes, but then there's the extra squeeze. So we'll release it from the mould and then one extra squeeze with the hand, just applying that little bit of extra pressure, just pulls those particles together a little bit more. So in situations such as this, 8 foot deep, allow it to get all the way to the bottom without too much breakdown through the water. Now let's cast this one in and let's see what we can get. There's a fish. One of the key things to method feeder fishing, what lots of anglers get wrong, is bait placement. And thanks to moulds now, it's something that you really can't get wrong. Take today for instance. These fish, they've wanted the bait to be sat very low in the ball. So if you think of the mould in an upside down fashion, wherever you place that bait in that mould is where it will actually sit in the ball. So if you want it at the top, you would place it at the bottom of the mould. If you want it in the middle, you put it into the middle, stack some bait in first, and where I want it on the bottom, that hook bait will go in last. So I will fill the whole of the mould up, just make a little dimple like so, place my hook bait in the middle, so you set it like that, bring the hook bait over, firm press. Now one of the best terms I've heard in match fishing about a method feeder is a good friend of mine, Dean Barlow, actually called it a mouse trap for fish. And when you actually look at it and think of it in that way, it's really essentially what it is. The fish comes in, he noses around, starts breaking up, and like today they want it low in the ball. And they just keep picking away, not on baits around the side. They're coming in, and there it is. They pick out that boilie, they'll turn, engage the way to the feeder and on. And like he said, a mouse trap for fish. And that's probably the best term I've ever known a method feeder be called. When you cast a method feeder into the water, lots of anglers just think, I must hit the clip. But the way you reach that clip is the important part of getting that presentation that you want, that feeder going down in the water column. And the way you need to do it is that this feeder, once it's going through the air, you need to feather down and reach the clip so that the feeder makes contact with the water in that fashion. It's just like a firm, just like a slap as such. You'll know when you've done it because it makes a familiar sound, just a plop, a nice delicate plop. You'll see it comes down in one hit. If you get it wrong, all the bait will eject. If you hit the clip too fiercely, the bait will guillotine off. If on the other hand you fail to reach the clip and it dives in shorter, it has a reverse effect. The bait and all the particles fly off the other way. But you wouldn't see that with the naked eye 9 times out of 10. You'd think that the feeder's gone down and everything's there. So what we need to do is just demonstrate casting in now, feather into the clip. So nice and steady. It's that nice little rocking motion. The distance from the tip to the feeder is just something that will suit different anglers. And I always say about casting, it's like a golfer's swing. Everyone has their own style, but as long as you feather down to the surface of the water with the feeder, you can't go wrong. And we just dip the tip, it made that little plop, let all the line sink, and we just bring the rod back up. We don't want to disturb the bore, and just minimal tension, a little bit of line on the bottom, just to eliminate too many lines and false indications. Now, one of the most important things that we found from the underwater footage, that it's not just about casting correctly, it's about how you retrieve that feeder from out your swim. And the reason being, you don't want to be dispersing bait all over the peg. So what we found was that when you want to take that feeder out the peg, just a sharp retrieve, and that would disperse all your particles in just a tight little area where your feeders have been sitting. If you just start winding, you will leave a great big trail and cloud, and fish will start moving all over, creating more liners and lots of different false indications on the rod tip. So just that one little jerk of the rod, just twitching it, just releases everything and leaves it concentrated in your swim. Right, let's have a little recap on what we've learnt. Firstly, feeder choice. There's lots of feeders out there, but they're not necessarily always the right one. So the right feeder for the job you must choose. Secondly, the casting. We've learnt that the right way to cast is nice, steady, feathered down, so the feeder enters that water correctly with a nice, steady, flat plop. Thirdly, retrieving the feeder is equally as important as casting that feeder in. Fourthly, the mouse trap. Where you position that bait in that ball is a key part and a main factor to whether you're going to put fish in your net. And finally, the squeeze. The amount of pressure that you apply to the method with the bait that you squeeze on will affect how quickly you will get a bite. And on that note, I'm just going to have me one last cast. I'll see you all soon.
I think we try and do things a little bit differently. We look at the market, try and be very modern. All the stuff we design ourselves. We can all surmise, come out with theories, but at the end of the day, if you want to, develop product and you want to know exactly what's going on, you've got to look under the water, haven't you? People have come away and said, well, I didn't know that happened, and I didn't know this happened, and that's changed my way of fishing. And I think to do that has got to be a plus when you're designing product, hasn't it? If you're 100% right with knowing how your tackle actually performs, you've got an advantage, haven't you?